Welcome to episode 6 of the Street Smart podcast. I'm Anu Chakravarti with the Global Center for Youth Futures in Atlanta. Our topic today is career counseling and mentorship. There is a lot of buzz about preparing young people to be future ready. After all, the future has never seemed more uncertain for young people who are the majority of the world's population. AI appears poised to reduce the need for working humans. Far too many young people have inadequate access to school due to poverty, forced displacement, and conflict. And even those emerging with degrees find themselves competing with hundreds of others for a single job. No wonder governments are emphasizing entrepreneurship. Go create your own jobs. Of course, this will also require intensive guidance and mentorship. Our guest today will help us think through the role of counseling and mentorship in youth journeys to help them figure out a track, to acquire skills, to find a job or create a job for themselves, and to future-proof in some ways the young person having to navigate the choices, the trade-offs, and the transitions into adulthood. Please welcome Shoma Dam, recipient of the University of Chicago's Outstanding Educator Award for her decades of work championing innovative pedagogy and holistic student development. A sociologist at heart and by training, she has a master's degree in the field. Shoma is currently Vice Principal of Academics and Head of International Academia at Sun City School in Gurgaon, India. She also plays a leading role in the global IC3 movement focused on international career and college counseling for high school students. Also important is that we went to school together back in the day. So we are very pleased to have you here, Shoma. Welcome.
Thank you, Anuradha. Thank you for having me, and it's a real pleasure.
Welcome, Shoma. Welcome. Tell us, based on your long years of experience working with young people, are young people worried? Should they be worried? What do high school students need? What are they looking for in their own words?
Okay. So I got into the space of career counseling per se around 8 years back, 8 to 9 years back. And the world has changed drastically since then.
Yeah.
8, 9 years ago in a country like us, and I'm speaking specifically from my experience, right? And it was very linear in terms of career choices, engineering, medicine, law, primarily, and maybe design somewhat, or the defense services somewhat, or the child had a family business to fall back upon, so
Right.
business. Post COVID, and of course, post the fifth industrial revolution, if you were to consider, come into AI, yes, it has become very dynamic. It has become very confusing because there is an information overload, right? So if you put into Chat GPT as a 16, 17-year-old, tell me the top 5 career options, give me the top 15 college choices, and what do I need to do in order to crack into the top 5?
Yeah.
You'll have a fantastic roadmap, right? And I've done this as a career counselor. I've tried it out to see what it throws up.
Yeah.
Because when a kid walks into my office, some of them come with this background. Right? So there is an information overload. They know the top 5 jobs, top 5 skills, but do they know themselves?
Yeah.
Have they sat down and tried to really think, who am I? What is it that I'm good at? What is it that will make me skip a party and work on that particular problem? Right?
I wonder if anybody's ever asked them that question, right? I mean, it's a big question when you're 16, 17 years old.
Yes.
Right?
Those are big questions, but I believe going into the future, if we do not ask these questions, and if we don't, push our children to ask these questions, more importantly of themselves, they will fall back increasingly on what is being produced en masse by AI or by Google or by some influencer on Instagram, and then try to follow a path which might not be the right path for them. Right? And a lot of these questions have you sit down and ask yourselves difficult questions.
Yeah.
Very difficult questions of yourselves.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not saying all of them do it. So from my personal experience, you can say you have a very small minority who are very clear what they want to do. They know their top colleges, where they're going to apply, what are the next steps. And then there are also the majority who's like, okay, life happens. And I let life happen to me. Right. And or maybe I will think about college once I've gotten into college. And then I will think about the rest of life when I graduate from college.
Right.
Right. Uh, it's very important that as adults around them, we start asking these hard questions because I don't know whether these are hard questions are being asked at home.
Right.
Right. Again, I'm with a disclaimer. My students come from very well traveled, entitled, privileged backgrounds. Right. So they've traveled the world. Most of them have visited the colleges that they wish to study in. So they have a decent amount of idea of what it is that they're landing themselves into.
But Shoma, if I may jump in here, then when they approach the counseling office or the counselor in their school, what are they looking for? If they already know what they want to do, whether they've been influenced by an influencer or whether they are finding, ChatGPT is throwing them the top 5 avenues, sort of with today's world, and they are already finding answers from these different sources. When they come to you, what are they looking for?
Okay, so what they're looking for essentially is, I know I have to take the SAT.
Yeah.
When is the right time to take the SAT?
I see.
How many shots of SAT am I allowed to take?
Okay.
Okay. What score do I need to get in order to get into, say, for example, a Caltech? Right? That's the assessment bit of it. What kind of scores do I need in my grades 8, 9, 10, 9, 10, 11, 12 to get an admission? And then what kind of research papers do I need to work on? Do I need to work on a research paper? Is there a position open for me to fill in the student council of this school? Should I be applying for the student council? Okay, I am maybe slightly interested in doing some kind of community service. Do I need to do in order to crack that admission?
Right.
So a lot of ideation happens, a lot of brainstorming happens, a lot of back and forth happens. So I'm interested in economics. What can I do with economics in order to stand out?
Okay. Stand out in what way?
Stand out as an application. Because I know that, as an applicant, right? Because I know from my school, from my cohort, there are 20 other people applying to the same course to the same universities. How do I stand out?
So they're interested in.
Basically, they're asking me, can you please tell me who am I?
Is that what they're asking, or are they asking, help me unlock the door to the next step, and then help me unlock the door with the scores and the application? And
see, you can unlock some part of the door, and especially for US admissions, with the scores. The scores are very important. But the rest of it has to be, who are you? Because those essays are about who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Right? So unlocking or unbundling, let's put it this way, a lot of that is about who you are as a person, essentially.
So your job would be to push them to ask.
To push them, to keep pushing them.
Frame it in terms of those larger questions.
Exactly.
Choices.
Yeah. So it's just not to provide information, it's also to provide some kind of insight. Right? And because I work in a school, I'm also teaching. I teach actively. And because of my position, I also get to oversee some of the academics of it. So therefore, I have a holistic view of the child. I'm talking with teachers, I'm talking with their co-curricular teachers. I am watching them when they're performing in the assembly. Maybe they're doing a quiz or doing a debate, representing the school. So from grade 9th onwards, I'm keeping a track. I'm seeing them evolve. So once they come to me and start having these questions.
And what point is that, Shuma? What point is that?
It's like I said, for the ones who are very driven, it starts as young as grade 9.
Okay.
So as young as that, you know, and some as late as grade 12.
Okay.
As yeah,
But
it depends.
everybody
But
is welcome, regardless
everybody
of
is
when
there.
they are approached, at what stage
Absolutely,
in their
absolutely,
school.
absolutely. And parents also play an important role in this entire conversation, in this journey. Because again, uh, when I started the conversation again with parents was like, I'm an engineer, my child will only become an engineer. Not to say that that has disappeared completely, especially when it comes to field like the fine arts.
Yeah.
So what kind of jobs will they get in fine arts?
Right.
Studying painting, right?
Right.
So parents have their own anxieties. It has come down. They're open to a lot more future ready, funky options right now. They're willing to trust their children a little more with their money, with their decisions,
Yeah.
right? But largely, it still remains a challenge. It still remains a challenge.
Yeah.
Because parents also have their dealing with parental expectation is a major challenge of being a career counselor.
Right. Do you have any? Do you have personal interactions with parents, or?
Of course.
Okay, that I'm sure that makes things challenging.
Yeah, because the first interaction is always either the child comes in saying, "Could you please have a word with my parents?" or the parent approaches,
Yeah.
right? That they need to. So it's a the first interaction is always with the entire family, father, mother, and the child.
Yeah. I'm slightly surprised, but not so surprised. And that little bit of surprise element comes from the fact that we faced that when we were growing up, that there were very limited options in terms of a well-paying career, right? A
Right.
well India globalized and growing up in an economy that opened up itself up to the world. And for the first time, we were exposed to all of these different options. I mean, media, sports, sports commentary, sports writing,
Right.
journalism, all of these things that avenues that paid well. You rose rapidly if you did a good job. They just opened up, they proliferated. So it was no longer a doctor, engineer, lawyer. So that parents still want to push their children down these. I suppose there are more guarantees in those fields than
Exactly.
elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, understand the unique dynamics of the city that I live in. It's semi-urban, semi-rural.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a huge migrant population of
Yeah.
these very well-to-do CEOs, CFOs, CTOs, all those that you can think of.
Right.
Right. And they were traveled, well educated. And then you also have the first generation English education, local inhabitants,
Right.
and they've come into the money and they want to, this education is the fastest way to gain social capital and
Yeah.
cultural capital, right?
Yeah.
And they have the money right now to buy both of those,
Right. Right.
right? So for them, an engineering degree or a medicine is far more preferred than going into, say, journalism.
That makes sense, thinking about it like that. Um, Tell us about the IC3 movement, Shuma. Why the urgency and kind of what explains its rapid growth into a global movement?
Okay, so the IC3 movement started in 2016. I think they're celebrating their 10th year this year. There's a huge
Yeah.
annual conference plan. And it was the brainchild of this one gentleman by the name of Ganesh Kohli.
Mm-hmm.
He was a math tutor,
Okay.
right? And one day, I think what made him pause and reflect is the fact that, what am I doing?
Okay.
Tutoring for math, tutoring for engineering math, but then what next for the child?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, what he realized was that there were far too many unhappy engineers, unhappy doctors, because they hadn't got the right kind of guidance,
Mm.
and they ended up in professions that they really didn't want to be in, like our generation, maybe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that made him think that as a country, with our demographic dividend, if the youth is not guided properly, then Monday will always be a painful chore for everyone. And work-life balance will always be a major thing for all working professionals. So, and the best way to deal with this problem is to have counseling, career counseling in schools, which we did not have career counseling. Yeah, it was
practically unheard of.
Unheard of.
Formalized. Yeah.
So he realized that the best way of dealing with this issue is to have established counseling cells in every school. And before you could do that, you had to train counselors. You had to train people to become counselors. What is it that a counselor does?
What does a counselor do?
Okay. So a counselor, if you were to if you're into career advising, particularly, then you are helping an individual make informed educational choices that will then impact their careers. Right? You're looking into things like assessment. What kind of tests do you need to take? You're looking into application and admission strategies. You're looking into profile building. You're reading those essays 200 times and asking for the 201 draft. Right?
Yeah.
You are coming into their life at specific points, maybe at the end of grade 10, then holding their hand through to grade 12. And as a school counselor, maybe that's where your journey ends. Right? You're providing them with expertise because there is some amount of training that a counselor has to come with. So essentially, you can call it a very, it used to be a very transactional relationship. Right now, the space is such, like I said before, post COVID, there's so much of information that is available. The child will come to you just for information. The child will come to you for insight. So I think going ahead, we are stepping into that realm where you start off with mentoring.
Yes.
Then you go into career counseling. And then maybe you graduate into coaching also. Like, to give you a personal example, I have known this student of mine for the past 12 years now. So ever since I joined this school, he came into my orbit. I've known him since he was in grade 7. He's doing his master's in London School of Economics right now.
Okay.
He came to me as a very curious, very articulate individual. Knew a lot about the world. I guided him slowly towards something called MUN. I'm sure you've heard of Model United Nations. Yeah. He rose to the position of being the school's Secretary General, and then went on to do his law from University College London. And now he's doing his master's. And in between, we also had a short period when I was teaching him sociology in 11th and 12th.
Okay.
So this journey that I saw of this child from 7th to now, to his age, he's 23, 22 right now, has been not just him asking me questions about, ma'am, what should I study next? It has also been about him asking me about, what are your views on electoral politics?
Right.
It has also been him asking me questions about anything and everything under the sun. Literally, anything that sparked an interest in him, he would come back and see how I felt about it. So from him recommending me what kind of emoticons to use in conversation, to me recommending to him what kind of books to read to become a better MUN debater, it's been a journey where both of us have grown.
That was my thought as well, that just career counseling and helping them to unlock the next step and to write out the application versus a real relationship that evolves over time and reveals vulnerabilities on both sides. I'm sure he feels free to, make a bad joke. I mean, pull your leg, and that kind of a mutual relationship of give and take, and with both parties learning and evolving, like you said, is a wonderful thing. But from what I'm hearing from you, much of it is driven by what the student is looking for, what the young person wants.
Right. And also the number. So a graduating cohort for a school like ours is like 133 students, say 140 students. We're a smaller school. Say, for example, a Delhi public school. A graduating size can go up to 900, 1,000.
My goodness.
And the number of, yeah, that's a big number.
Yeah.
And the number of career counselor may be just one or just two.
Okay.
So to develop that one-to-one connection, it requires time, effort, energy on both sides. Of the time, the counselor doesn't have that bandwidth.
Of course not.
Right. So IC3 therefore dreams or envisages to train not just career counselors, but also to bring in career counseling to teachers. So every teacher in the classroom is a 10% career counselor.
Okay. By 10%, 10% of the time of their time.
10% of the time, yeah. Yeah. You know, where they're talking about what the child can do with his or her specific subject.
Mm-hmm.
And that can then lead on to far more in-depth interactions, discussions, provided the child finds that interest in the subject, right? Physics, maths, whatever it might be, whatever the subject might be. The goal and the mission right now is to move from information to insight and to train as many people as possible within the school community. You know, if there is a question, there is someone who is there to not just answer, but to also ask another question to the child.
That's engagement.
That's engagement.
That's back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that they've done such a fantastic job of it that the CBSE, which is the largest, testing body for India, the national curriculum, they have made it mandatory from this year that every school which affiliates with CBSE must have a career counseling cell in their school. It was not a mandate before this.
Do school administrators understand the urgency of this, that we are graduating hundreds of 18-year-olds every year without contact with a human being that will sit and listen to them and ask these big, small, medium-sized questions and help them explore their options a little bit? Because, there may be a mandate to open up a cell, but if the cell is severely understaffed,
right. And the cells are severely understaffed.
I wonder what the incentive might be for administrators to pick up on this idea, to make the most of this mandate and serve their students better.
So you correctly pointed it out, it can just remain on paper and you open up a room, put up a hoarding, and that's about it. And appoint one teacher who will also double up as a career counselor. But again, here IC3 comes in because they actively also mentor, have regular conversations, and they run a program for principals and heads of school, appreciate and understand the relevance of counseling. So schools perform better if the child has a clear vision or somewhat of a clear vision of, all right, I need to do this, there's greater engagement in the academics. That will then easily translate into better scores. And which school doesn't like high scoring students? So there's a very clear advantage for the school there. Also, it brings in far more settled students. It's easier to handle the anxiety. And then this generation is really anxious. And all the talk about AI coming in and taking your job is not really helping them. So I wish all those videos, and especially most of the AI videos that talk about this, would just be banned. They're any which way struggling with mental health. So many. And then have this constant anxiety, oh my God, will I be relevant once I graduate? Will I be able to find a job? Right. So I think IC3, with their constant conversations, with their training, have also been able to impart this understanding to principals, heads of schools, that you're doing this not just for a very philosophical reason, but there is a very realistic goal.
There's a
practical sense.
Because I think school administrators are driven not just by mandates, and it's also, the idea that it brings prestige for the school. If a student goes on to do really well in a path that maybe that young person hadn't thought of at first, but it evolved with mentoring and guidance, and over time went on to do really well and is good advertisement for the school.
Yes.
So that might be the clearest incentive for administrators to sort of jump on this,
Right.
rather than, you have to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. But yes, there are challenges. Like, India is such a vast country. So a tier one city like Bombay, Delhi,
Mhm.
Bangalore, Hyderabad, where there's a lot of expat population, also people who come in from the US and expect this as part of the school curriculum to be there, or the process to be there. They have better functioning counseling networks.
Right.
The city that we grew up in, I think counseling there is essentially run by IECs, or independent education consultants. So that's a private space altogether.
Right. And you pay for
You
that.
pay exorbitant.
Talking about class and access, Shoma, that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, our work with young people. And so much of it is in heavily under-resourced, such precarious situations, young people in poverty traps and refugee camps, they're caught in war, or, just trapped by various institutional failures. To them, I always say, look for a mentor. And even with formal counseling, the way you describe it, and I'm thinking that there's such a huge variation just in the realm of formal career guidance and counseling, where it's even mandated, and much comes down to how the school acts on it and what incentives they see, or whether the administrator believes strongly, has been converted by, let's say, the IC3 movement. So there's such a huge variation in that space, and contrasting that with these spaces where the idea of formal counseling is probably, is a laughable one. And when I have an opportunity, I always tell them, look for a mentor, someone maybe who can't solve your problems, but will listen with empathy, can provide perspective, um, even give strategic advice from time to time, if the young person has a dilemma or has to make a difficult choice, point them in the right direction. And if nothing else, provide a steady supply of quiet encouragement. It could be an option that is potentially available to young people in these situations, provided you actively seek it. And what I'm hearing from you is, in some ways, it is the same thing. Even when formally these resources are provided, much depends on the young person actively seeking, right, to transform that one-off encounter into a relationship by curiosity, relationship building, constantly coming back and asking questions and engaging. So in some sense, that dynamic is probably pretty similar, that even though the formal resources aren't available, much depends on how actively you seek guidance, even if your situation is one of, general deprivation or violence. um, and I wonder if such a mentor can substitute for formal access to a counselor, however imperfectly.
Right. A mentor is someone who will hear you without judgment.
Yes.
And will ask you, will help you in the process of finding confidence in taking decisions,
Mm-hmm.
and will support you, after you've rationalized, critically thought through all options.
Mm-hmm.
And once you've taken a call, will stand behind you irrespective with your decision and support you through.
Yes.
For that, you don't really need the space, or you don't need the mentor to be trained in anything apart from having the courage to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Because it takes courage to listen to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're so caught up in our own world, in our own duties, in our own whatever, to then have the patience, the empathy, the willingness as a human being to lend yourself to another human being and tell him or her that I'm there, you know,
Yeah.
use me as a sounding board, tell me what you're feeling, and whatever I know to the best of my ability,
Yeah.
I will support you and I will stand behind you.
And so that person could literally, be a grandparent or
Be a friend,
a
be a
stranger
friend,
that you've
be a
met,
senior.
an aid worker or a NGO staff
In
member.
short,
So it's a quality rather than
a degree or a qualification.
a qualification, as something that certifies here you are a counselor and you have all of these.
I think we need more of mentors
Mhm.
in every situation rather than just counselor who will tell you the tests and the profiles and the essays.
Yeah.
You need more mentoring of adolescents, of young adults across the world. What I see around me, and especially I teach 16, 17, 18-year-olds, right?
Mhm.
And social media, there is so much. Most of them watch a lot of things, huge amount of divisive, very violent, very regimented thought processes. And I think one of the things that has led to that is the lack of a mentor, someone they can talk to without fear of judgment.
Mhm.
I've watched maybe a tone deaf, misogynistic content online.
Yeah.
I found it
Yeah.
funny. And I
Yeah.
share it with the mentor. And the
Yeah.
mentor is able to maybe laugh, but then also divert the conversation. Okay, what made you laugh at this? Okay, put yourself in that person's position who was being made a joke out of. How
Yeah.
would you feel in that situation?
Somebody to help you reflect, talk through
Talk to,
your thoughts.
yeah,
Um, I see what you're saying, Shoma. At the same time, so much depends on the initiative of a young person to find a mentor. And like we said, if someone is actively looking for a mentor, there are so many possibilities out there, right?
right.
Starting from a stranger on the bench. And I've been
Yeah,
reading recently about these little local experiments.
yeah,
Grandmas sitting on
yeah.
benches at certain times of day.
Mhm.
And
It's all right.
yeah, if you need someone to talk to, you just go sit on the bench, have a quiet chat. And with a stranger, perhaps it's easier to open up sometimes.
Exactly.
So these little experiments that seem to be helping. And so if a young person understands that even though there are really no ready-made resources for me to use, and I can't see my way out of this situation that I'm in, and I don't know what to do, but there's still a person who understands, talk to.
Right.
Need to find somebody. Um, but these are all such informal mechanisms. I wonder in these spaces, these under-resourced spaces, is it possible to find ways that these young people, if they want, should be able to access more formal counseling? So a school that has a well-staffed career guidance cell, if they may make their services available
Yes.
to young people from under-resourced schools in the larger area, or
Right.
what can we do to expand this beyond the more institutionalized, better endowed educational spaces? Because there are young people in informal settlements, migrant settlements, very poor homes, managing to stick through the entire school cycle and graduating.
Right. Right.
And then they don't know what to do. And I think that more formal inputs be so critical for them.
Right.
Some way to have them access those networks that are being built, that are already there. Of course, I know you said that the networks there are already overwhelmed. But maybe this is a thought for the future.
I think if schools that have a well-established career counseling center, they could, as part of their mandate of serving the wider community, you know, there are schools in India that are doing it, by the way.
Oh,
You know,
really?
yes, some of the biggest schools in India are actually reaching out to government schools where they might not be career counselors, and their career counselors have gone. It's a proper schedule that they follow, so they'll visit once a month or something,
Okay.
have sessions with their students. So it depends a lot about how schools, how evolved they are, and how willing they are to serve the wider community.
Mhm.
Also, I was thinking in like you said, you work with students and young people in refugee camps. So in those camps, there will be people who are older than them, who might have had a career before they are in the situation that they are in, right? And if these younger kids could identify and then reach out, and if that adult could be somehow via NGOs trained and then placed in charge. Because I'm sure these spaces also have support in terms of NGO support or other organizations stepping in to provide some kind of relief.
Yeah, I've seen that the kind of support is mostly sort of survival oriented support. And a lot of that work is then celebrated as people's resilience, how resilient young people are, through every cut in food aid, through every harassment, they still manage to stand up and speak up or organize. But I think standing up, speaking up, organizing, these are truly testaments to their resilience, but something more. What then? And I think where mentoring and counseling comes in is it's helping young people figure out what then, what next,
What next?
what next, what is the bridge to where I want to go, or where do I want to go, especially for a young refugee person where they're not allowed to travel into the host community. There are restrictions in the host country. They are not allowed to hold jobs outside of the refugee camps. I've seen the handful of people who manage to find mentors in an international NGO who then helps this person through his or her networks, guides them through a refugee education program. But these are a few success stories. Either they're pursuing online education, the college they enrolled it is abroad, but they are still physically located in the refugee camp. And a handful have managed to get visas, before the restrictions became even more severe. They are now living and attending wherever the campuses are, mostly in the West or in Southeast Asia. But these are a handful of cases. It tells you what is possible. But
yes, that kind of institutionalized support. Unfortunately, I don't have a clear response or solution for that because a lot of it is also politics driven, right? A lot of it is also what the government, not just the government, how the people of the country look upon the refugees who've settled there, how they view this other group that has come in and the fear of the other. That kind of challenge is huge. It at times it might be insurmountable, right?
right. It certainly feels insurmountable to the young people, but I guess then the only option they have is to navigate better in their own ways, find their own channels, locate that mentor, find the person with the network, establish a deeper relationship, one of curiosity, one of intellectual exchange. Because if those initiatives and relationships are not built, then really they become the constraints overwhelm them. The way to loosen those constraints perhaps is to learn how to navigate better with the help of a mentor.
Right.
And you can have a series of mentors, right? A mentor could be your neighbor who points you in the right direction, tells you to approach.
Tells you the right someone.
Exactly.
Points you to the right direction, to the right person, to the next step.
And so you figure out that path. I think we are basically talking about the same thing, that whether formal or informal, it can do great things for a young person.
Yes.
Shoma, in my previous conversations with you, you mentioned this term of future ready learner. I feel like anybody can be a future ready learner, provided they have access to a counselor or mentor. Or what exactly did you mean by the term?
So you can be future ready in terms of skills.
Yeah.
So, math skills or English skills or whatever skills that you think is essential to have, to not look for permanent employment, but be permanently employable. You're employable no matter what because of the skills that you have.
What is that magic set of skills? Or is
Think
it an attitude? Is it a preparation of the
there
mind?
is the skill set of
Yeah.
it, and then there is a person set of it, the
Yeah.
personality set of it.
Yeah.
I think we need to work more on the personality, the person, the attitude set of it. That side of future ready. And the skills, you can pick up a skill. You
Right.
can teach yourself, like you've taught yourself how to edit a video,
Right.
right?
Right.
But that mindset, that is far more important. That at whatever age we are at, and I'm not disclosing our age here, whatever age we are at, the fact that we are willing to learn a new skill and do something with it, that's a mindset. And that is something that a lot of our young kids, the ones that I work with, don't have. They're willing to give up very easily. That willingness to engage, okay, it's difficult, but I will still keep at it. That's something, that is what I'm looking at when I'm saying future ready. To be resilient, to have grit, to be able to reinvent yourself. That takes courage, that takes patience, that takes resilience. Resilience is something that I think should be taught in schools. As a skill set, it should be taught. It's so important for us and for the new generation to have. So when I say future ready, that is what I'm looking at an individual who's just not good at math and science and English, but is also able to, think critically, deal with people, you know. The art of having a conversation without a device in your hand is challenging for them. Yeah. To just sit down with a person and just ask them, how are you? What do you like? What are your interests? And that's so essential, right? To keep building the human connect. From my experiences, students who are very successful are people who have been able to get along with all ages of all kinds of people.
Right.
That's a huge skill.
That is a huge skill. The ability to collaborate, the ability to pick somebody's brain, ask questions, be a part of a team that is multi-generational. Yeah. There may be a slight contradiction in that. I was just thinking as you were talking, Shoma, that we want our young people to have security, right? That is the sort of the middle class dream. Our children should not have to worry about the basics, and then slowly it becomes they don't have to worry about anything.
Right.
And then suddenly you tell them when they're 15 or 16 that everything's changing and they have to prepare for uncertainty. And I think that that is a rattling experience that we provide certainty. But where is the training for uncertainty and constant
Training
change
for failure.
come from?
Yeah. I think from what I see of my students, especially the very high achieving ones, they've not faced failure. So I'm worried. The first failure at university or whatever level, what will they do? Because they don't know how to deal with failure. They've never met failure. There has always been someone who's been able to brush aside the failure or done something to ensure that the failure doesn't happen.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is
I don't think we
increasing.
are helping our young people
Not
that
at all.
way.
Schools ideally ought to be the safest place for a child to fail. Exactly,
Fail and
learning to
recover.
fail. Yes. What's the path to that? But in this race for perfection, for the best college, for the best degree, are we leaving all of that out? Are we telling the child it's not okay to fail? You have to get it right every single time. And then, boom, there's a failure. And what happens then?
Right. The world is changing. We may have started out with a job in a company, in an organization, and then many of us have voluntarily pivoted, changed direction, like I have. And then others, moving from contract to contract. It's a gig economy.
Right.
Even for highly educated people with formal degrees on paper from outstanding schools and universities, you end up surviving from contract to contract, and your ability to finish this out while you're already searching for the other one
Right.
All of that is a reality our young people are going to have to live with much more than we have in our lives. We are just, beginning to understand these shifts, but they will have to live
Yeah.
with these shifts.
Yes. So
Um,
to train them, to that I think makes them future ready. To train them beginning at school that it's okay to fail, but you have to get up and move on. The concept of prototyping testing, what design thinking is all about,
hmm,
right? So that's something that as a school we focus on very heavily.
yeah,
That go back to the drawing board if something is not working, come up with an alternative plan, and then see where it takes you. You don't have to get the formula right the first time. You can come back with multiple drafts. That
I,
kind of assurance and that kind
that
of
certainly helps. Yeah,
that
yeah,
helps. That helps.
right. That is not a one-shot deal.
It's a work in
Iteration process,
progress. The time.
always work in progress. Yeah, yeah. Shoma, thank you so much for the conversation today and for
Most
your
welcome.
insights. I think what we learned is that there's much to learn.
Yes.
That we don't really have all the answers, but we do have a keen sense of the direction things are moving in, and that we ought to change our approach, not just our approach as an older generation, but kind of guide and shape how our young people think about work, about life, about joy, about change, and how inevitably and quickly things will shift for them in different phases. We must have you back to talk more, Shoma. I admire the work
I'd
you're
love
doing.
to.
And when we talk next, I am particularly interested in brainstorming with you practical ways of extending the benefits of formal counseling and formal mentorship to young people who lack access to these. I think at the very least, we need to spread the word about actively seeking mentorship, the kind that they
Yes.
need in their situation. And that is available to them should they look for it. This is it for us today. Thanks once again, Shoma, and thank you to
Thank you for having me.
our great pleasure. We'll have you back, Shoma. We need more answers from you next time. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed our podcast today. To
I
everyone
did. I
listening,
did. A lovely time.
thanks, Shoma. Catch you soon. Until next
Yep.
time. Bye bye.